Welcome everyone. For this, before we go into more specific real estate questions on it, it'll be a pleasure if you can get a quick maybe 75-90 seconds view from you in terms of the overall impact that you think is this budget has made on you and your view on the overall impact that it will make there. Pavitra, starting with you.
Yeah, hi everyone. I would say this budget is much awaited, especially after the pandemic and all the crisis the country has gone through. That said, the economy has seemed to do fairly okay despite all of the negative impacts of lockdown. But I think the government had also promised that they would do something particularly big and impactful this year for the country, and I think we've seen that they have really focused a lot of the spend on impact that would reach people on the ground. So focusing a lot of the spend on health and well-being, which is very important in today's time. They've also looked at how do we develop people and be able to improve job growth, reinvigorate human capital. There is a significant amount of impetus for innovation and R&D. They've also looked at overall how can they invest more into infrastructure, which is important and will help all of the sectors, and also how can they divest out of public entities and look for better efficiency in that sense. So I think overall there is a lot to be said for what they need to balance a lot of things. We will come back to it in terms of what we were all hoping for in the real estate sector. Maybe we had a lot of high expectations. But overall, I think it was a good budget. The market has also reacted well. That's kind of an overall statement.
Neeraj, before you go on, let me just quickly give a brief of guests to consumers. We have Pavitra Shankar, who is the Executive Director of Brigade Enterprises. We also have Ashoo Gupta. She's partner Shardul Amarchand Mangaldas. We have Rajkumar Bansal, who's the MD and CEO of Edelweiss Asset Reconstruction Company, and Suresh Hari, who's the Chairman of CREDAI Bengaluru. Neeraj, back to you.
Sure. Thank you. Raj, if we may come to you in terms of your reading of the budget and what's particularly, let's say, you've liked and in terms of its impact.
As far as I understand, from every perspective, though from the real estate perspective and the construction perspective, I will add both of them. Because there are a lot of infra push, a lot of roads, a lot of dedicated freight corridors, a lot of metros. So finally, all these help the real estate industry overall. In addition to, of course, the affordable housing 1-year extension, but I feel the major impact of the budget would be on infra push. And that will help overall real estate industry. If you have more metros, you can develop slightly suburb. And I think that is the main issue. When you have more dedicated freight corridors, I think that will also help having the urban development. A lot of money on urban development itself. So overall, I feel it is good from every perspective from the real estate industry. Though I didn't find anything specific if you are looking for some issues about stamp duty type or some reduction. But I think it's good from my view perspective.
Okay. Suresh, if we come to you in terms of your perspective on the impact that this budget is creating, on the overall as well as on the real estate sector specifically, you are in the Bangalore region. If you want to just talk in terms of is there any specific thing which is a miss from a Bangalore region perspective?
I won't call it a miss. The overall sector misses perhaps are there. Our friends are there in the panel who are in the same field. But what I would suggest is overall a very impactful budget. I don't deny that considering the pandemic we have gone through. But a lot of infrastructure push has been given that is going to help. The expansion of the small companies scope gives room for many more entering that space and properly being in that provision. One of the important things we have been seeking is a labor code that has been at least brought into place. That is the one important thing. We are playing thousands of crores, which is lying in the kitty of the sales, which is not being deployed to the ultimate beneficiary. This will help the migrant labor. In fact, the extension of 1 year term for the affordable house is one more important aspect, both to the investor and also to the developer. That's a good aspect. There are many more good points are there. Let us look at the good point. Normally, the devil is in the details. So let us see how the details pan out once the whole bill is passed and the details come in. We feel the infrastructure push has taken a good step forward in this budget. That's what it looks like. But having said that, one important aspect we have to understand, see, we always say the monsoon is very good. So that doesn't mean monsoon makes it good, the economy just boom by himself. We need to, the farmer has to go out, plant the seed and do the cultivation. So we have to look at how the government can enable, there is a lot of positive push for the Indian economy overall. The World Bank to others have projected a good growth for India. So we need to take that extra step forward from both sides. The investor side and the government side need to take a step forward. Maybe certain step may be painful, but we need to take that step. I'm sure this government will take care of it. Let us see more detail as we discuss further.
Sure. Ashoo, if we come to you in terms of your perspective, and if you may just want to add, there was an announcement on the ARC as well.
Thanks. So
if you could
overall,
just add
I believe it's a very good budget. The government, considering that the government had to really walk a tightrope between the fiscal deficit and spurring the industrial growth, they've tried their best to, balance it out. As far as real estate is concerned, they have introduced three very important things. They have emphasized on affordable housing by even putting greater emphasis on the migrant crisis issue during pandemic. They have brought in a new rental housing in, ATIBA, which is a great move, which will help the migrant workers to have affordable housing, rental housing in areas where they are actually working. Then REITs and InvITs also, by getting foreign investment into it, they will enable a greater flexibility, and the developers will be able to basically, deleverage and get in the new office premises, and I think it's a very good move.
Okay, there are two things that have happened here. The government is trying to monetize the existing infrastructure, the eastern and western the DFCs, the dedicated freight corridors, and the toll roads. The this is a direction that they've talked about. Existing assets, let's monetize through public-private partnerships, and the new ports and things like that, management of ports they're handing over. Is this something that is good for the private sector? Ashoo, you want to talk about that?
Yes, it is certainly good for the private sector, because, and also for the overall development of these, because it will get more systematic, it will get more organized, there will be more accountability, and as a result of which the development will also speed up, and the work will get done much faster.
Right. Pavitra, India is growing from 35% urbanization to about 50% urbanization. After you and Suresh Hari have spoken, I'd like to go back to Mr. Suresh on this. But 35 to 50% urbanization need not necessarily be in the cities that we are in. It has to, you have to spread it across India. And with this entire infrastructure thrust, what we're trying to do is actually spread out our development, right? Is this an opportunity for the industry?
Yes, certainly it is. But I would say real estate growth really follows where the jobs happen. So if the jobs continue to come to major urban centers, then that is where we see office space getting built. And naturally, that is where the residential space will also get built. And then you have the service sector like retail and hospitality following. So I think it is really how much can the government spur job growth in tier 2 cities. We've always talked about how the country does need to push growth in tier 2 cities if we are to see a more equal sort of growth for the population. But I think that is where it is. And maybe some of this, some of the effects that have happened during the pandemic with a lot of people maybe being able to work from home, they have seen GST collections rising from tier 2 cities. Maybe that is, some kind of catalyst to the overall. But I would say as long as the major metropolitan cities get the lion's share of jobs, which is typical in our country and also multiple other countries and globally, we will potentially see, the real estate growth also happen in those locations.
Okay. Raj, I'm going to come to you. Airports in tier 2 cities, ports across the, and also some amount of assets being created along river lines and so on. We are trying to, the government is giving us indication that it wants the development to move out of the top 8 cities, right? Do you think that is possible? What are your views on that?
It's possible. See, another trend which we are seeing now is that initially government tried about 5 years, 10 years ago actually, for more infrastructure in private sector.
Right.
Somehow it didn't work out. It resulted in a lot of NPAs, a lot of EPC companies struggling, a lot of land related issues. So I think government has understood that. So if you really see what is the approach in this budget, first you build up the infrastructure maybe in the government sector, and then you either sell it through InvIT or REIT, or you can just monetize that. I think that seems to be the good approach. This can work. That is what, whether it is ports, whether it is airports, whether it is roads. I think roads are built up by NHAI and then you monetize. Similarly, ports you can privatize after Airport Authority of India. And I think even in railways, after some time, maybe after a few years, we will see that happening. So I feel that's an overall good approach, and that can lead the development coming around to smaller cities. Smaller doesn't mean immediately it will go to villages, but it will go to, let's say, semi-urban centers and urban centers. And of course, as I said, once you have a lot of metro systems in place, you can go even 100 kilometers from the metros. I think that is the approach, and it should work.
Right. And it's not only the metros, it's the light metros, the neo metros, the RRTS. So clearly the government is saying the hub and spoke, anything, the spokes that can reach the hubs. Suresh Hari, your views on this before we go to Mr. Suresh. You're on mute.
You want Suresh Hari or me? We Suresh.
Suresh Hari.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hi Suresh, we are sharing the platform. Don't worry.
Don't worry. Pleasure.
The views are common. I know that. See, some of the policy that has come on infrastructure, which is going to develop. I agree with Pavitra. What she said was the urban center getting the lion's share of employability. But equally, when you kickstart the infrastructure project, the tier 2 and tier 3 cities are going to benefit more by connectivity. And that is where work from home you spoke about. Work from home cannot with all the sectors. Brick and mortar need a physical visit, and so are the customers who have to physically go out. So work from home is restricted to few who can do that effectively, but not all. 80% of the work has to be physically done. So work from home is one aspect. So one of the myths I find in this budget is the commercial and the office sector, which has not been given that much of a push in the, though the REIT is debt financing is coming in, and restructuring of loan, that has been one of the demand of the industry for quite a long time, particularly now because of the pandemic. It is unknown, uncalculatable effect has taken place. Many are not able to manage it. So unless something, very drastic has to be done, then it will have a very positive effect. That's what we need to wait for, the more details to come out. How these 20,000 crore into banks are going to come, debt refinancing, restructuring, how they are going to do that. One more thing is the affordable house classification. The value has to go up. In a city like urban cities, where do you get the rate that has been fixed at as affordable home? Even if you go the benefit for the migrant labor, it is very difficult to develop for the migrant labor also the affordable section in the urban centers. The cost of land, which is a basic raw material, is so high. How do we do that? So we need to look at some of these basic principles and the guidelines to be revised in a very drastic way. We have to take that giant leap. It's not just small step. Yeah, we are looking at government doing that. Let us see, we are looking at a lot, but housing for all is one push they are talking about. 2022 was the target. I don't know how we are going to achieve that. If we can do something drastic, it is still possible.
Mr. Suresh, I'm going to come to you.
Yeah.
The government has talked about the vacant assets, the vacant lands with the public sector undertakings and so on. So clearly, those can be monetized. Can that be one way of making this affordable rental housing reality? Because every industry person here spoke about land. That land is too expensive a resource for them to use it for a social objective. So clearly land needs to come, and the government did talk about some of the resources, idle resources that can be monetized. Do you think that is one way of bringing affordable rental housing?
Of course, it is one of the ways, but that is not the way for all situation, because you may not get where the cities you want such type of asset being available. Definitely we can use land as a resource principle is being increasingly used all over the world, and you can do that provided in those particular city you are able to provide that you need the rental housing. It's very important. But what is required is that you have to make the point that is brought out in the earlier session also by Raj as well as Deepak was make available the land cost component, which is what Hari also, as Suresh Hari also mentioned, is the land cost component in the rental housing. If you're able to bring it down to near zero, then becomes a reality, because the type of returns that you get in rental housing of the order of 1 to 2% or 3% is the type of return that we are getting. So to make it as a viable proposition, interest rates are of the order of about 8 to 10%. Even with the reduced rate, if you get for the construction loan, you have to make it viable. So I think what is required is find out a way by which rental housing can be made a successful reality. The government having launched it very recently, but not too far, and now decided to give that extension of the benefit of tax relief for one more year. We should find out what are the roadblocks which come in the way of the rental housing. One of the options, as we said, is to utilize that land which is available. The other one is to bring the sweetener component over there. By itself, it may not be succeeding in that, but you mix along with that particular rental housing component another parcel of a land using commercial development or other development, because then you can try to take care of that particular positives coming in that particular project to take care of the loss that will be coming in the rental housing. So on a standalone, it may not succeed. Land to be made available is a good point. But I think the larger point that you raised little earlier is the going down from the big city. While I agree with Pavitra that people go where the job is, but then very clearly indicating the direction that they're already moving to tier 2 and tier 3. Take, for example, here in Bangalore, most of the development are now pushing down into Belgaum. We're going into Gulbarga, is going to Bidar, is going to Hubli Dharwad. You may not have major growth happening in Bangalore, Mysore, or Tumkur, or Mangalore for that matter, where all the major jobs, but then it's happening. So similarly, other states will make analysis on that. So therefore, I think the idea is that you got to get down from those top around 50, 60 of those cities, even the 1 million plus cities or 5 million plus cities or a 10 million plus cities. Don't put all your eggs in those baskets. They're just 50 to 60 numbers. Get into those 500 numbers, which are 1 lakh plus population. I'm not talking about too small. 1 lakh plus Amrut cities are going to be a major, major opportunity for you, because that's where a lot of money is coming for all infrastructure to come over there. And that's very good, because if cities get the infrastructure, they reserve into the road, water, water supply, sewerage, drainage, waste management, other power, etc. Automatically housing will come in those particular areas where economic development also is already identified, which is Pavitra's point, where job comes, people will move over there. But there is a clear-cut signal of substantial amount of development now moving into. I can tell the whole country map and tell which are the big moving cities now where development is taking place. Housing is moving in a large way. Don't concentrate only in the big cities because they're all there. Every time you rental housing, you talk about Bombay's land, but that's not India. Come on. You can't talk that one case of land cost being, that's the opportunity cost of land, where land cost is 95% of the cost of the building. You'll be surprised to know, where building construction costs only 5% and land, the so-called opportunity cost of land is so much. So don't give that as, that's a absolute aberration. Don't even talk. In such cases, you got to find out new ways by which rental housing scheme can made available. They got mill land available. They got sport land available. They got so much of other land available.
I'm going to pick up. I'm going to take that forward, and I want to bring in Ashoo here. Ashoo, there's a lot of redevelopment that needs to happen. While we talk about cities and that it follows development, housing follows jobs. One of the things that we haven't done in our cities is brownfield development. It is mired in various legal issues. We don't seem to be able to step forward and get redevelopment, which can free up land, which can bring in, mixed integrated land use and so on. Do you have any ideas on what can be done here?
Yeah, sure. Basically, in Mumbai, at least, there is a lot of redevelopment that is happening in areas around MMR. Also, as long as societies and all are concerned, there is a lot of regulations that are in place that enable redevelopment to take place. It's only because currently that the real estate industry is going through a bit of a crisis that projects have slowed down and people are not really interested in taking up new development. That's the reason why we've seen a little bit of a slowdown. Once things slightly start moving ahead, we do believe that redevelopment is the way to go forward, in addition to the government land that will get released.
Neeraj, you want to add on that? Because we have been talking about how redevelopment, one, they are old, there is no norm for which areas of the city should go in for redevelopment. You want to talk about that?
Oh, sure. I think there have been always been gaps in terms of the understanding, and also they've been changing policies as well with respect to this area, and especially for a city like Mumbai, or region like the MMR region, wherein we are landlocked as well, and there are challenges in terms of connectivity also. So there is always been a perspective to say that how do you do redevelopment which is beneficial for all stakeholders, and there's also been a lot of trust issue as well, with respect to how you are able to garner an interest from a variety of users to come through, and then be able to do that, because in the past there have been many instances wherein the promises which were made have not been able to fulfill, and with the government changes that have been happening, the viability of some of the projects also at points in time have been into question over there. So I think the challenge here is that we have differing interests coming for a singular project over there, wherein from there are beneficiaries who are looking at it from a user perspective. Then you've got developers looking at it from a profitability perspective. So there are timing differences as well in terms of the redevelopment and actual usage, and then transfer to the actual users around it as well. So I think the steps to that are still not complete over there, which is the reason why you have these gaps coming in more and more there.
Raj, we are talking about a fintech hub in Gift City. We're talking about 7 textile hubs, which the finance minister referred to. Will these be growth engines? What are the issues around this? Land has been an issue. So how do you get land for such large projects? Gift City, of course, is already established.
Gift City government has already given the land, and I feel in the Gift City, what is going to happen slowly, even AIFs, lot of AIF and lot of funds which are registered overseas as of now because of the tax considerations, they can move to now Gift City. So a lot of people, let's say, typically if you go to Singapore, most of the financial sector, Indians are only working there. So many of them, in fact, can move to Singapore from Singapore to India. So that is one thing. Sorry. And even the textile hub. Well, here also government has tried actually textile park. So the lands are available in areas which are developed by IDCs in each state. So that can certainly become so, but that brings to the point is basically how do you create employment and how do you create export surplus from these textile areas? Because otherwise textile in India for our Indian consumption anyway we are producing. So the idea is that maybe something like China, if we can make exportable surplus from these centers, then certainly it will lead to more jobs, more employment and more requirement for the housing.
I'd like to add something on GIFT City, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So when that was first announced back in 2014, I would say, we as Brigade were very enthusiastic about it. We thought this was a great initiative. We actually went ahead and invested into GIFT City. We have constructed an office building and a hotel there. And on the ground, the planning, the design, everything that the infrastructure has been put in place there is fantastic. So it is a real kudos to the government to what they have been able to do in terms of GIFT City, in terms of if you build it, they will come. But unfortunately, I would say not enough people are coming. They need to understand what it is that would encourage financial institutions to actually have a serious presence in GIFT City. Almost every financial institution has an office in GIFT City, but it is not substantial enough to really create the kind of demand that the government was hoping for. So I think they need to understand what is the hesitation on that front and do some kind of policy changes that would encourage that.
Sure.
Because trying to redevelop existing cities is very tough. But when you're starting with a fantastic ground up like GIFT City, it's really a missed opportunity.
Suresh,
Biggest problem is the prohibition itself in Gujarat. Sorry, in a lighter vein, the entire any financial center word-wise needs a lot of such things which are not available in GIFT City.
Jayashree, on the same point, what Pavitra has touched on, see, one is on specific GIFT City and others, but a lot of parks are announced, even in Karnataka announced such parks. I was part of one of the team, I think about 4 or 5 years back, they identified an area and said, CREDAI can take the initiative in going and developing this area itself as specific. But the problem is, how do you work out the detail? They want us to go and acquire it. We cannot go and acquire because it is impossible for us to, as Suresh has put it rightly, the cost of land is so exorbitant that when we approach, it becomes 10 times the normal cost that the government can acquire it. So it has to be a reverse. Plus, the rules made should be much more flexible. Today, we have rules which are at conflict with each other. We have multitude of rules which are impossible to follow. We should make the rules simple so that everybody complies properly. We need to make the single window system really single window, not multiple doors. So we have to get into much more easier way of handling. Things will move.
Pavitra, if I may come to you, the Brigade has been a proponent of new technology and the startup, movement as well there. So, and we do have a global Azure technology challenge coming in with the government support, which has been happening from last couple of years there in that. From the budget perspective, are there 2-3 things that you think have been, could have been done strongly, to support the Contech, or you can call it, from a real tech perspective, which has been missed or something to be looked at?
No, actually, I think the government has, put in some measures to, focus on innovation and R&D. They've actually given 1,500 crores to provide financial incentive to promote digital payments. So that is an important thing that they have done. And this is also, if you can, revamp the financial industry and bring technology, I think that itself has been one of the saviors during the pandemic itself. So I think that was a good push. I think what they could have done was also try to do a little more to boost the growth of startups themselves, while there is some push in terms of focusing on startups, and we think they could have done a little more in that sector.